Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 677 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We will be breaking down everything that happened across NXT and AEW over the last week. Both programs building to big shows at the end of the year, going into, obviously, 2025 for AEW. It is World's End in late December. For NXT, it is New Year's Evil, the first Tuesday of the new year. We have an absolute ton to discuss on the show, and we actually have an absolute ton to remind you about off the top. So let's kick it off first with a reminder that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about the five.
You know the deal. Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Also, when it comes to the number 5, don't forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audio to every major TV show, and exclusive news posts, usually on Friday. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We would greatly appreciate your support. The rest of our reminders, one way or another, have to do with social media. So I'm not going to repeat the ways you can find us a million times. On Twitter, it is at Getting Overcast. On Blue Sky, it is at Getting Over. Now, why do I so badly want you to follow us on social media? Couple reasons. First, it is the perfect place to send in questions and comments for the show. So please hit us up there. Do exactly that. The other thing that you can do, and this is super important right now, is vote for Getting Over as the 2025 wrestling podcast of the year. Yes, I know it is 2024. They call it 2025. I was corrected to that on the last episode. But the Sports Podcast Awards, balloting for that is officially live. We have pinned the ballot to our accounts on Twitter and on Blue Sky, and we would love for you guys to vote us Best Wrestling Podcast of the Year. We won the award going into 2024. We would love to win it again and go back-to-back going into 2025. If you all know the Silver King, he loves accolades, and I'd like to add that one to the list. Speaking of accolades, the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties, will be coming to you in early January. We will have nominations for all of those awards. I know previously I told you they were coming out this week. Silver King lied, didn't have the time. They will come out starting this coming Monday. So as many award categories as we decide to have, probably at least 20, you will have the opportunity to nominate your favorites. And the awards are plentiful. Everything from Male Wrestler of the Year to Hater of the Year to Smack Talker of the Year, TV Show of the Year, pay-per-view/premium live event of the year. We're going to have them all. So start thinking right now about your favorites from 2024. And when those nomination posts go out, I will repeat it once more on Twitter at Getting Overcast, on Blue Sky at Getting Over. You can reply with your own nominees that we might have missed. We'll do our best to add them, and then we will have a ballot so all of you can cast your votes for the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties. Now, we do have a lot to talk about on the show. We're going to go over NXT and AEW, and we're going to get into all of that.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
And really, it's one news item off the top and a couple conversation topics to follow. The news item is that Warner Brothers Discovery announced on Thursday that old AEW content will be uploaded to Max on a rolling basis starting on New Year's Day. All AEW pay-per-views and Dynamite episodes from 2019, plus 2 months of recent episodes. I'm not sure if it's only Dynamite or if it's going to be Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage. Doesn't exactly matter. Dynamite's the main show anyway. All of those will be uploaded at launch, and then they're going to roll out I presume going in order 2020, 21, 22, and 23 on the back end. Eventually, all of their content will be available on Max. Of course, you're going to need to subscribe in order to see all of it. They do have a variety of different plans, and you already knew this, but AEW pay-per-views will be available on Max at some point early, or maybe not even early, but at some point in 2025, and they supposedly will be at a discounted rate. So we're going to have to see how that goes as this deal progresses, but that is something to keep an eye on going forward, especially coming out of World's End into that first Dynamite of the new year. It's going to be simulcast, I should mention as well. Dynamite and Collision will be simulcast on Max along with TBS and TNT respectively. So what is that going to do to ratings? Will it matter at all? Is it going to actually increase the audience? Might the quality be better? Could it be more live streaming than it is on TV? Is there any type of delay? These are all questions that we're not going to have the answers to until we actually get the chance to watch that first episode. But speaking of AEW, its media deal, ratings, that's really where this conversation is going to go off the top of this show. And we're actually going to throw in some NXT here as well. The main topic, and I tweeted earlier in the week that we were going to discuss it, and some of you had DM'd me about it, which I was kind of sick of repeating the same answer, which is why I wanted to say it on the show, is there was this conversation happening on social media comparing AEW to WCW. And I cannot stress how illegitimate of an argument it is comparing the companies and their profits to one another. For starters, WCW's expenses were ridiculous given they toured, they ran major venues regularly, they overspent on contracts to a degree that would even make Tony Khan blush, and they had so many wide-ranging investments, many of which were straight-up money losers. Think about like Nitro Grill as just one of the many examples to that end. But the biggest differentiator and the reason why any profitability conversation is automatically moot and disingenuous, and no, it is not about inflation, although that plays a major role. What a dollar was worth in 1997 compared to 2024. I mean, it's crazy for me to think about because I've lived that entire time. But I promise you, for those of you who are younger, dollar got stretched way further in 1997 than now in 2024. It's not even comparable. But again, the biggest differentiator in a profitability conversation between AEW and WCW, it's that WCW did not have incoming revenue from television rights. It was wholly owned and operated by the company that broadcasted it. The only reason that AEW is going to be profitable in 2025 and beyond is its media rights. And that is not a slight. Let me be extremely clear. The vast majority of WWE's profits come from their media rights and the Saudi Arabia deal as well. But what one cannot do is suggest that AEW is a greater business success than WCW when the situations are nowhere near analogous. And that's really all the time I'm going to spend on this because we have a lot more to talk about, and I don't want to get deeper into that conversation. The other topic I wanted to address off the top, and this is going to get us into our ratings conversation early, are comparisons specifically between TNT, TBS, and the CW. Obviously, respectively, the stations that air Collision, Dynamite, and NXT. There's a contention out there that the CW being a network station, meaning it is technically free over the air if you have an antenna, which in 2024, I'm not saying nobody does, but the vast majority of the viewing public, especially the people who spend money, I would say, do not. And therefore, because it is free over the air and technically accessible via antenna, it is accessible to more households. That is true. But what is untrue is that equal ratings on the station. So let's say on the CW, you got 500,000 viewers and a 0.2 demo. And then on TBS, you got 500,000 viewers and a 0.2 demo. What is not true is that the rating on the CW is less impressive because it was on a network channel and TBS is a cable channel. Now, that would be true if we were talking about one of the big four, CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox. It is not true about the CW, which is regularly rated lower as an overall station than 19 different cable channels. And yes, that includes TNT and TBS. TNT is the 7th highest rated station in the country. TBS is the 21st. The CW is the 24th. And that's with NXT's ratings on its air. Obviously, TNT and TBS include AEW's ratings. But the CW is 24th. That includes its highest rated show. There is nothing else that airs on the CW that comes in anywhere close to what NXT brings them. So just because more households have the ability to watch the CW does not mean they are going to tune into a station they never watch. There are not going to be natural viewers who carry over from a lead-in to watch NXT like regularly happen, for example, with Dynamite. You all have heard the Big Bang Theory conversation. I've had the O Network in my house for a decade or longer. Never once have I turned it on. Just because I have access to it doesn't mean I'm going to watch it or happen upon something that might be on the air. I have the E Network in my house. Do I regularly turn it on? No. Might I come across it and notice, they're airing Amsterdam, I think, was the movie with Margot Robbie was on today. And I was like, oh, shit, I'll watch that for a little bit because it's a station that I actually flip through. On my YouTube TV, I have it ordered as such where I'm regularly going to pass by it in my guide and say, oh, yeah, they occasionally have content. Maybe I'll click on it. The CW, before NXT aired on it, I think it was in the 50s. Like if you were ordering it in my YouTube TV. And that's just me as an individual, for example. I don't think I had watched the CW outside of like a random ACC college football game in like 15 years, maybe longer than that. So to put a bow on this conversation, there is no scenario in which equal ratings on the CW compared to TBS or TNT should be considered lesser. If you want to do some back of the napkin math to make it a percentage of available households who actually watched, sure, you could do that if you wanted, but that's completely ignoring facts and going by the label of network versus cable, as opposed to the reality that the CW is a lower rated station watched by far fewer people, particularly in the 18 to 49 demo, than TBS or TNT by direct comparison. So with that said, let's talk ratings, get this shit out of the way. Then we're going to break down NXT and we'll break down AEW. Last week on the show, we taped before any ratings came out, so we did not get the opportunity to discuss them. So we're going to do 2 weeks real quick right now. NXT last week did 680,000 viewers and a 0.17 demo. This week, they were up 708,000 viewers and a 0.16 demo. Up in the viewership, down slightly in the demo. Last week for NXT was the highest viewership since October 22nd. This week was the highest since the second week on the CW. Hugely positive. AEW Dynamite last week did 594,000 viewers and a 0.17 demo. This week, up 625,000 viewers and a 0.19 demo, both in the positive direction. Last week, AEW was up 8,000 viewers from the week prior, but below 600,000 and 0.2 for the third straight week. This week, AEW finally got back above 600,000, and it had a better demo than NXT comparatively. Again, they don't go head-to-head. They're on different nights against different competition. Having a nearly 100,000 viewership gap, though, 2 weeks in a row, when you compare NXT to AEW, you can't ignore that. One product is clearly gaining viewers. Another seems to be losing them. Overall, not in the demo. We'll have to see how this continues transpiring. How is this going to change when they get on Max? What's going to happen with NXT going into the new year? A lot of momentum going into New Year's Evil. Will they be able to maintain that on the road to WrestleMania and Stand and Deliver? We will find out. As mentioned, we're going to kick off with NXT. We will cover AEW on the latter half of the show. We have timestamps in the episode description if you wish to jump around. But as always, we hope you listen to the entire show. And I'll just remind you before I even get into this, because I forgot off the top, we have 2 WWE episodes for you to listen to if you have not already. First, The WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Instant Analysis that was published Saturday night is waiting for you in the podcast feed. And on Tuesday, we did a big show about the entire week in WWE, everything else that happened across SmackDown and Raw, some big announcements for the Raw on Netflix. I did wind up watching that Raw on Netflix kickoff event Wednesday. I watched it Wednesday night. We will cover that this coming Tuesday on our next WWE episode. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into NXT and then AEW. First off, NXT aired live from Lowell, Massachusetts. The venue was fantastic. The crowd was good enough, but it was way, way better than the last time they went on the road in that horrendous facility that they should never visit again, mostly because the crowd was bad. The facility looked cool, but the setup just didn't work. Lowell should be, I don't know, at least like a biannual stop, maybe even a quarterly stop on the NXT calendar. That venue was great. The fans were awesome as well. Let's move out from that and talk about all the matches and segments. Axiom fought Obafemi. This opened the show with Nathan Frazier ringside. I had missed last week that the specific reason Axiom got this match was to fight on Frazier's behalf coming out of the Iron Survivor Challenge destruction at the hands of Femi. Oba chopped the life out of Axiom during a springboard. He did it so hard that he literally left a handprint on his back. Femi dominated offensively, but Axiom countered a powerbomb into a Rana cover, hit a missile dropkick. Oba ultimately caught Golden Ratio in midair, hitting Fall from Grace for the win. The expected result, a quality match. I'd have liked a little bit something more after the bell, some respect between these guys, something involving Frazier. It was a good match, but it was just rather lackluster from that standpoint. The tag team championships were on the line. I believe it was the mid-show main event. Fraxiom against Gallus. Axiom collapsed during their entrance, and Frazier wore a mask selling a deviated septum. In high school, that meant a girl got a nose job over the summer. The champions hit 3 tope suicidas with Axiom collapsing while trying a 4th. He sold way more than Frazier did at Deadline just in their tag team title match. Frazier hot tagged, hitting a springboard, inverted DDT, standing shooting star press, and frog splash. He ate a surprising swanton bomb from Wolfgang, with Axiom appearing for the first time 5 minutes in to break the fall. He took out Mark Coffey with Golden Ratio, but accidentally hit Frazier with the same while trying to take out Wolfgang. Axiom landed a slingshot Canadian Destroyer on Coffey that atoned as Frazier took out Wolfgang with a Poison Rana. Axiom took Wolfgang off the top with an avalanche Spanish fly and splashed Gallus ringside as Frazier hit a perfect Phoenix splash to retain the titles once again. I don't even know what there is even to say at this point with these guys. No-brainer for Tag Team of the Year. 4 stars A- for the match. Despite Axiom kayfabe operating at maybe 25%, his physical storytelling was off the charts in this match. Literally as good as it can possibly be done from a pure exhaustion standpoint. It's so difficult to keep that up bell to bell while also wrestling and doing all of your moves. Gallus completely held their own as the B-side, and while there were not as many threats of defeat here as there were at Deadline against NQCC, you could still feel the drama coming through this match. These guys are simply fantastic. Fraxiom needs to stay together for a long time, well into a main roster run. I am sure Frazier has designs of singles wrestling. I'm not selling Axiom short. I'm sure he has ideals about that as well, but they work far too well together as a team to break them up anytime soon. This is a main roster team. This is a main roster championship team, and they need to roll with it. Axiom's personality after going under the mask is somehow larger than it was when he wasn't wearing a mask. He operates back and forth with Frazier exceptionally well. Frazier himself has found way more personality than he ever had before since coming into NXT now that he's teaming with Axiom. I just love these guys together. It's awesome. In terms of Gallus, my expectation coming out of this is that there's really nowhere else for them to go in NXT. So the question's going to be, and I hate to kind of put it this way, but main roster or free agency, right? Like WWE is going to have to shit or get off the pot with these guys. They did all that work with The Rock going into WrestleMania. They basically trained him for that. And you would think that would hold a significant amount of cachet. there are certainly roles that they could take on the main roster. A heel trio that can get beaten rather easily, but still be dominant in stretches, that is valuable. I think they're going to be part of this transfer window. That's my guess as of right now. The NXT Championship was on the line in the main event. Trick Williams against Eddie Thorpe. The challenger backstage was proud of himself for outsmarting Ava and taking a shortcut. Ava confronted him over it, but Thorpe threw it back at her, saying it doesn't feel good to get blamed for something you didn't do. Facts. He's really the first wrestler to outwit her and be right about it. And it's a solid character turn for him. I'm still not loving his personality, but it's better than it was. There's no question. Oba later confronted Trick during a backstage promo of his own that didn't exactly go anywhere. The crowd was crazy for Williams as he entered for this match. Eddie hit a brainbuster before they botched something. Trick came back with a bookend. By the way, I love that Vic Joseph calls it rock bottom in Booker T's face on purpose. It's such a fun commentary quirk. Williams kind of hit a Death Valley driver, only for Thorpe to basically hit an impaler DDT. Williams' feet knocked out the referee on that move, though. A second official came in, with Thorpe hitting 2 big boots on Williams in the corner. When he tried a third, guess what? Williams countered with a trick shot. He fell down into the cover, but he fell across Thorpe's torso. All 4 of their shoulders were down as both referees simultaneously counted 1, 2, 3, an identical finish almost to the Shawn Michaels Triple H match from 21 years ago. You can Google it. NXT ended with both referees arguing their cases to Ava, who looked perplexed as the show went off the air. This was probably the best use of trick shot recently because it was done short range, so it didn't look ridiculous like it usually does. It doesn't change my take on the move being terrible as Trick's finisher. Beyond that, man, was this match rough. Never got into a flow. I'm not saying Trick is regressing, but he's certainly not progressing. He's basically operating like the old John Cena moveset in that he does 5 moves and a few of them just okay. Every match is identical for the most part, and every finish is the same as well. Even here, despite the intrigue created by the double pin, it was exactly the same as usual. Williams with his back up against the wall, taking a ton of offense, rebounding at the last second to hit trick shot before getting the cover. Super frustrating. By the way, Thorpe's foot was under the rope during this cover, which is a rope break, and therefore neither fall should have counted, and the match should have continued. But I digress. The post-match aired completely on social media. Ava decided that the tie goes to the champion, which is the correct decision both in kayfabe and sports reality. Tie goes to the runner, tie goes to the receiver, stuff like that. And again, that's if you consider this a double pinfall, which I just explained it was not, but okay, whatever. Trick celebrated in the ring as Eddie screamed in Ava's face about getting screwed. HBK came out to mediate, only for Thorpe to shove him backwards, which would have been cooler if we didn't just see Kevin Owens do the same thing to Paul Levesque. Williams pulled Thorpe off and landed trick kick, one of those moves he does just okay, to effectively end the live show for fans as they chanted HBK. I understand why this did not happen on TV. But to Chris's point, our co-host Chris Vanini on our WWE show, for those of you who either are new listeners or focus on these episodes over those, WWE these days is putting way too much important stuff on social media. Doing it occasionally is fine. If you're going to do a cliffhanger, then hang us all the way to next week, or at least until the next day. Don't make us go on social media to get the answer literal minutes after the show goes off the air. It's not treating the viewers who are investing 2 hours and change with you on TV with respect. I just sat my ass down and watched your product until 10 p.m. I shouldn't have to go seeking further answers online moments later. And trust me, this is not a get off my lawn type of deal. I'm online all damn day, and I'm usually online until midnight after these shows. I just prefer resolution on the program I'm watching if you're going to give it to us inside of 15 minutes, as opposed to making us wait a week. Again, if you're going to do a cliffhanger, do a cliffhanger. If you're not, then don't. All of that said, the finish was kind of frustrating, but the shove of Michaels will surely get heat on Thorpe. This is an obvious rematch candidate. The question becomes whether they triple threat at New Year's Evil or have Williams fight between now and then. If they go the triple threat route, which seems the most likely, it's a blatant entree into pushing off a definitive Williams-Femi match until Stand and Deliver. The only question is going to be whether they change the title and have Trick get his rematch in April, or have Trick retain with Oba demanding another opportunity in a few months. What I do know is that I do not need Trick and Eddie wrestling one-on-one unless they purposefully underdelivered in this match, knowing a rematch was coming. If I have to make a prediction, I'm going to say triple threat at New Year's Evil. Trick pins Thorpe, Oba's pissed, gets his rematch at Stand and Deliver, beats Williams for the NXT title. If that happens, Trick should stay in NXT. He is nowhere near ready for the main roster. I just want to reiterate that on record, Thursday, December 18th, way before Stand and Deliver. There was a detailed video package showcasing the 12-year history of the NXT Women's Championship, literally from the beginning all the way to the present with Roxanne Perez. No one was left out, including Sasha Banks, Ember Moon, and Mandy Rose. It was extremely well done, but oddly timed, given the match is still 3 weeks out. I would have liked a greater focus on building the match at this juncture, but I just presume they weren't available for TV this week. Stephanie Vaquer got a promo package on Cora Jade where she shared details about her international background while admitting that Jade got to NXT first and does have a leg up on her, but now Stephanie is everything Cora wishes she could be. Vaquer promised to send her straight to hell. She's a great promo in Spanish. It's so effortless when she expresses herself. Totally believe in her. The ceiling is immensely high. Javon Evans celebrated with Hank and Tank. Given they all won last week, Evans ran down his crazy year since debuting in April with Hank and Tank putting him over at every single turn. Ethan Page sulked in the background and brushed past them in disgust, having heard enough. He then interrupted the broadcast, cutting a depressed promo in the ring about keeping a promise to his kids and wife by becoming NXT champion and doing it in record time. He broke the fourth wall, speaking to his wife through the camera while getting what chance. He said, disappointing them weekly is eating him alive, and he's lost his smile. I believe I had that. Evans interrupted, calling Page cocky and egotistical, but he said the character and the real Page are different. Ethan clearly loves his family. Javon said bro probably about a dozen times. He put Ethan over for busting his ass to get to the top and deserving to be there, but he asked him to drop the all ego and be the real Page because the wrestlers and fans are all legitimately proud of him. You knew where this was going. Page said Evans was right. He shouldn't be worried about losing his smile. He should worry about taking his. He slugged Javon with the mic, then snapped his neck with a chair. Evans sold it perfectly, grabbing his jaw as probably like 4 blood capsules exploded in his mouth. I have not seen that much fake blood in a long ass time. This was exactly what it needed to be. Extremely well done by Page. Evans was better than expected, trying to lead his part of the promo segment. The perfect person for Ethan to attack, given how beloved Javon has been since debuting. And the simple fact that, you know, who the hell is this 20-year-old rookie to be giving advice to a guy who's been wrestling as long as he's been alive, but just happens to be going through a slump, especially after he was bragging his ass off like a moron backstage. Obviously, I'm giving you the heel perspective of this. Fuck around and find out. That's the situation this was. This feud is so easy in that respect, and that's extremely positive. The best storytelling is easy storytelling. It does feel like this might be a final feud for Page in NXT, because this is the type of rivalry the babyface ultimately needs to win. And if he does, then what does Ethan do after that? But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I hope I'm wrong about it because NXT needs him in the locker room a lot longer. But putting a spin on the I lost my smile gimmick in the same spot, Louisville, Massachusetts, that Shawn Michaels lost his by doing a full heel attack on an ultra babyface, that was extremely, extremely smart. Ren Sinclair fought Jada Parker. Teardrop came early with high steps and a Falcon Arrow. Parker reversed a full Nelson, but Sinclair chopped the shit out of her in return. Ren hit a double underhook suplex before leading the guys to brawl ringside. She countered Hypnotic into a roll-up, only to eat a back elbow and Hypnotic, with Jada picking up the expected dub. Really nice little match between them. We love Miss Parker here, but you could tell Sinclair was the more skilled and experienced wrestler. Just Jada's newer to the product. She's newer to doing professional wrestling. Ren, by comparison, has independent experience, and that's the obvious reason why she looked better in this particular match. This should start Jada on a track for the women's North American title, even if that doesn't come until WrestleMania season, but we will see the direction they go here. Let's not forget, she still has to probably fight Lola Vice a third time. Sol Ruca and Zarya fought the Meta Girls. Zarya put Jakara Jackson on her shoulders, with Ruca standing on her back like a surfboard for a splash on Lash Legend outside. That's a dangerous move that can frequently go wrong, and they executed it pretty well. Zarya followed by tossing Jackson over the ropes with a gorilla press right at her partner. There were a couple nice, meaty moments between Zarya and Legend, including a really tough vertical suplex. The faces nearly collided late, with Sol saving Zarya from a pump kick. There was a tough spot over the ropes, too, and Jackson hit a hesitant tope suicida before Legend hit Lash Extension on Ruca for the win. The right booking, given the Meta Girls are a real team and the baby faces were not. The match was paced and booked well, but it was unfortunately way too sloppy. Zarya either had an off night or maybe she still is in an adjustment period, because she left something to be desired both here with her strength and wrestling, and then previously in the last match that she had. As far as Jakara, she remains way too unsure of herself in key situations. You got to go all out on a tope suicida. You cannot half-ass it. If you do, you wind up like Brie Bella, and you don't want to do a tope suicida like Brie Bella. That's when you get hurt. This just left a lot to be desired. Despite the fact that I like all four women, it did not live up to expectations. Tyreek Igwe and Tyson DuPont argued backstage about sportsmanship, with Wesley overhearing them and obviously siding with Igwe, who said checks and championships matter most, not making friendships. DuPont just wanted to be respectful and not be sore losers. Lee spoke up, telling Igwe he's right and to keep that mindset. I loved this interaction with Wes and Tyreek, them becoming a duo or convincing Tyson to side with them, maybe even reluctantly, and them becoming a trio. That would be awesome. Great way to boost up the young guys, give Lee something to sink his teeth into after what candidly has been a relatively rough return from him from injury. All three sounded supernatural interacting here. Loved it. Tatum Paxley, Gigi Dolan, and Shotzi all played with their dolls backstage. Tatum called them outcasts, Gigi called them loners, but Shotzi corrected, saying they're all badasses with tons of potential to overcome their stereotypes. Paxley was thrilled that Shotzi brought them all together as friends, while Dolan was focused on taking out JC Jane and Fatal Influence. The heels watched this segment on TV and obviously laughed at the baby faces for not having the style or success that the heels do, and JC side-eyed Fallon Henley when she brought up her title. Unholy Union suddenly popped into frame, saying the faces at least have harmony while Influence is all in turmoil. They showed more personality here, I'm talking about Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, than maybe in their entire women's tag team title run on the main roster. Why? Because they actually got to speak and act like normal human beings. It's curious that they are now at least doing an excursion in NXT. I don't understand why they aren't used regularly on the main roster. I love the Paxley, Dolan, Shotzi trio. They just fit like a glove. They definitely need a name, and hopefully that's coming soon. There was also a fun social media bit with Tatum and Lyra Valkyria, where Paxley hid in her trunk and stole her passport, not wanting her to leave. Apparently, she's going to Ireland to do a match. She's fighting her former tag team partner over there. So it's just a fun way to kind of promote that, but also get another segment with Tatum and Lyra, and we love Tyra, of course, on this show. Lexis King trained with Charlie Dempsey, who broke out a deck of cards, saying that would determine their workout. It was a short montage with King keeping up and ultimately getting a Heritage Cup match granted. Unfortunately, this was so disappointing. I thought it would be a comedy segment, at least to some degree, but it was totally straightforward, short, and it just didn't live up to what I thought we were going to be getting. Even if it wasn't comedy, I thought something long and dragged out that had some reason for happening. And I know the reason was to give the match, but it didn't really work. Deion Lennox told Carmen Petrovic in the NXT kitchen that she got Ashanti the Adonis all wrong. He was trying to help her last week. She admitted that she did crash out a bit, and they hugged to make amends, only for Adonis to, of course, walk in at exactly the wrong time. He got pissed, saying he was done with her, and off to text Nikita Lyons. I mean, if they were going to do this, the least that could have happened was Petrovic and Lennox like kissing on the cheek or holding hands or something a little bit more intimate to send him off. If you're getting angry because a man is hugging a woman, you got some problems in 2024. I used to equate this to high school drama, but with that, it's like middle school drama at this point. And the acting here is, I mean, it's not even D-movie at this point. It's like worse than that. What NXT did not include Tuesday was any furthering of the Chase U storyline. They gave us a tease that something was coming up a few weeks ago, but it has not been brought up again since. Maybe they're waiting until New Year's Eve or later, but it kind of feels like a drop ball to a degree, especially given how hot the storyline had been coming out of the Ridge Holland feud. So we'll see if they touch on that next week or going forward. But that's the breakdown of NXT. Super entertaining episode. Not going to tell you it was one of the best, since the move to the CW, but I'd say it was perfectly middle of the road, and middle of the road for NXT historically has been super entertaining. Let's move over to AEW. Rampage, and this is, I don't want to say the only negative that I'm going to say when we talk about AEW this week, but Rampage was shit. It was back to being a worthless, forgettable show on Friday. Collision remained improved. It had the boisterous crowd, some really solid matches on Saturday, and Dynamite was even better with a hot-ass crowd in a smaller Washington, D.C. venue that legitimately made all the difference. Each of the last two Dynamites individually have been better than the best parts of the prior 8 or maybe even 12 shows all combined. Much more entertaining. This week's particularly hit well for me. This is why I have been so strident in my criticisms of AEW, because episodes like Dynamite on Wednesday are what AEW can be every week. And I don't expect them to be a 10 of 10 or a 9 of 10 every week, but they should strive to be that. And so frequently they don't. They're perfectly fine with a 4 or 5. And that is not perfectly fine if I'm investing my 2 hours in that show after already having watched 5 or 4 hours of TV, knowing there's 2 more coming up on Friday. Most of the last few months have been straight up dog shit. When I get the opportunity to watch and enjoy 2 straight hours of AEW like I did on Wednesday, it gets me so excited about talking about it on this show and what could be going forward for them. It's why I get so grouchy when other episodes of that show fail to deliver even 33% as much excitement. Speaking of percentages, this also played out in our match relevance review. Excluding the Continental Classic, 6 of 12 matches were storyline relevant. That's 50% and exactly the minimum we want AEW to achieve, which it did this week. It's obviously even better if you include the Continental Classic. The percentage goes even higher. So kudos to them for a much, much stronger week across the board. A huge rebound from the last few months. Now, just because I loved the shows in general doesn't mean I loved every single segment, but we're going to go ahead and talk about Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage, and we will order it based on storyline. On Collision, Will Ospreay ran after Darby Allin backstage. This was footage from last week's Dynamite. He thanked him for the save against the Death Riders. Darby unconvincingly asked Will to get his back against the Riders. Ospreay unconvincingly declined because he's been losing matches recently. Allin yelled at him that AEW and the Continental Classic may not exist next year if he doesn't help. That's not the stated goal of Jon Moxley's group. He doesn't want to put AEW out of existence. Anyway, Ospreay said to find him after the Continental Classic and he will help. To his point, if Darby is so concerned with Death Riders, why is he in the Continental Classic? And if it matters that much to Will and it doesn't to Darby, doesn't that show that he shouldn't be involved in the tournament at all? At least AEW is finally involving stars in the storyline and giving us reasons for them not being involved, even if those reasons are thin and frustrating. On Dynamite, Orange Cassidy, Jay White, and Hangman Page fought Mox, Wheeler Yuta, and Pac. White backstage cut a long-winded promo about not wanting to team with Page, who showed up demanding that Mox was all his. Would have made more sense for the trio's champions to all compete against one another, given that they're having Mox wrestle for no reason when he's the leader and they're all his underlings, but whatever. Mox no-sold a white German suplex, kind of redundant there, and Cassidy went on a run, taking all the heels down. Mox countered Orange Punch into an awkward cutter. Hangman set up for a buckshot lariat, only for Cassidy to take out Mox with an Orange Punch, which of course pissed him off. Then he ducked. Orange did a buckshot lariat that landed on Yuta. White caught Pac in a Blade Runner, with the faces arguing in the middle of the match, I guess over who should do the offense next or something. Given Orange and Mox were legal, why everyone else was able to wrestle tornado style on its own was ridiculous, and arguing over who should end the match when you're not legal was also dumb because none of them were on the other side of the ropes to get tagged in. Anyway, that created an opening for Mox to just roll up Orange and get the 1-2-3. They continued arguing after the bell, the faces did. The Death Riders surrounded them and attacked, and just like usual, we talked about this last week. The Death Riders storyline was running hot, fans were loud, only for them to do one extra thing at the end, silence the crowd, and end the show with a whimper. They were super into the fans. All the baby faces arguing and shoving each other. They wanted that to explode. And then they just unnecessarily did a post-match attack that took the air out of the building and ended the show quieter than it otherwise would have. I did like the concept of the finish. I just didn't like the execution. And obviously, we already know the result at World's End, so we'll just have to see how they execute that. On Dynamite, FTR cut a promo from home saying they had a problem with the Death Riders' methods, but not their message, because they also believe AEW needs to change and some of the talent needs to be forced into change. At the same time, they weren't going to go ahead and let Mox poison someone, which they believe should not have been met with a kidnapping and a beating, which, by the way, we didn't even get to see what happened to them. In this segment, Dax had like one arm wrapped up, and that was it. That was the result of a kidnapping and beating from last week. They could have gotten the footage. Didn't get any of it. What a waste. FTR said they will fight the Death Riders at Fight for the Fallen, which we assumed, and they said they won't be coming alone, which we also assumed. Clearly, the return of Adam Copeland will happen in that segment. The idea that they have been fine with the Death Riders, except for poisoning someone, and they felt no need to get involved when they were asphyxiating Bryan Danielson or doing a ton of other heinous shit, that's just absurd for a couple pure babyfaces as a tag team. It was ridiculous logic as far as I was concerned. Let's talk about the Continental Classic. Brody King cut a tape promo calling Ricochet a coward. Claudio Castagnoli did the same, telling Ospreay not to conflate victory with success. Why not? He beat you clean, dude. That's what happens. On Dynamite, Ospreay fought Allen in a Gold League match. Will dodged a coffin drop on the apron, with Darby careening off in another one of those so dangerous, it was fucking stupid spots. Straight up, there was no reason to risk landing on your spine or tailbone or anything in that way. And I say that at all. Like, you shouldn't do that ever, but especially in the first minute of a non-title tournament match. I mean, if you're doing it in the main event of a pay-per-view and a title's on the line and it's near the end of the match and it factors into the finish, I still hate it, but at least I understand. I hated this and I didn't understand. Maybe worse than the pane of glass spot in terms of potential long-term damage to someone's body. He later hit a flip-over stunner before a sick sequence that went like this. Avoided Sky Twister, inverted Alabama Slam style, escape of a Code Red, hidden blade, technically no-sold by converting Stormbreaker into a Code Red for a false finish. No shitting, might have been my favorite sequence of the year, other than the hidden blade having no effect. But I'll even allow that just this once because it was so cool. I love how it started and ended on the same move. We were asked by commentary, do you love AEW or what? Do you love professional wrestling or what? What I love is when commentary calls the fucking match. Ospreay took Allen off the ropes for a Styles Clash onto the apron floor, but he did it so extremely safe by landing on his feet, which was great. It was the total opposite of the coffin drop onto the apron. Ozcutter was hit coming back in the ring for a false finish. Darby countered Stormbreaker into Scorpion Death Drop and hit a coffin drop into Ospreay's back, plus another regularly to his front for the squeaky clean 1-2-3. Straight up exceptional match. My favorite from AEW in a long time, and the right person to beat Ospreay in their league. Darby badly needed a win back coming out of his losing streak, and Will had to take at least one L. He got protected with two finishers and like a 3.2 kick out. That was appropriate. It did feel like it ended a little bit too suddenly. Ospreay was clearly on top after that Styles Clash. There should have been another 3 minutes between that and the flurry of offense from Darby that caught Will by surprise. A bit more time, no commercial break. This gets an even higher grade. It was still a no doubt A match of the week across any TV show. Borderline for me between 4.25 and 4.5 stars, but it was an A. Like I said, no doubt. I need to watch it again. Definitely one of my favorite TV matches of the year from any company. On Collision, Kazuchika Okada beat the Beast Mortos in a Blue League match. The obvious and necessary result. I don't like Okada's dumb bitch gimmick, but I did like his promo earlier in the show, calling him the bitch Mortos. That got a chuckle out of me, especially with Mortos not having a reply because he doesn't speak. He just growled. The whole thing made me laugh. Okada hit 3 backbreakers And then it surprisingly got kind of basic until Morto set up like The Undertaker randomly, and Okada landed a spinning lariat and Rainmaker to win. I did not love the finish. On Collision, Mark Briscoe beat Kyle Fletcher in a Blue League match. Fletcher raked the eyes and got caught cheating with the ropes. Then he got a false finish with a brainbuster. Briscoe hit a super dangerous driver off the ropes without a cover, adding a standing froggy bow ringside and another inside for a false finish. Then he blocked a low blow kick and hit Jay Driller to win. It was a really exciting finish. I know Fletcher couldn't go through this entire tournament undefeated, nor should he, but having him lose to Briscoe instead of Okada, a heel who could have cheated and was the champion, given the Ospreay feud that's ongoing, I just thought that was a strange booking decision. 3.75 stars B+. On Dynamite, Shelton Benjamin beat Mortos in a Blue League match. He hit 3 German suplexes, 2 lifted knees, and a pickup power slam. MVP told us it's called the Hurt Fall, which is a shitty name, but at least a name. I liked that this only went 9 minutes. Lashley and Benjamin attacked after the bell with MVP threatening Daniel Garcia, the next opponent. So Garcia came out with Briscoe to brawl. MVP's Kane helped Hurt Syndicate take them out as well. I thought it was unnecessary until MVP handed Benjamin the TNT title, and basically they teased that feud coming up after the Continental Classic, so then it all made sense. On Dynamite, Ricochet stumbled over a single line meant to address his heelish antics last week when Hurt Syndicate interrupted. He sucked up to them, asking if they've seen how well he's performed in the Continental Classic. MVP asked to see his business card, so Ricochet took it out. Bobby Lashley grabbed him by the neck like a child, and MVP ripped it to shreds, saying no one likes a kiss ass. Ricochet then just kind of left, acting as if it wasn't a big deal, which is honestly what one would do and should do if publicly embarrassed and, excuse the term, completely bitched out like that, especially in a 3-on-1 situation. I liked that he kind of came across as more of like a geeky guy trying to hang with the cool kids. It fits his persona, like his real life persona, but it surprisingly did not get a strong reaction in the moment. I guess another term would be that he got little broed here. That's not really my generation. And to that respect, in reality, it felt similar to what Drew McIntyre did to him in WWE in that promo segment. In kayfabe, this feels similar to what happened with Cedric Alexander back when he got sunned a few times only to ultimately get the invite to join the Hurt Business. I was thinking after this that maybe Ricochet helps Lashley again beat Swerve. That gets him into the Syndicate, and then they move on from there. But there was more to this that went down on Dynamite. Ricochet nervously tripped over his words again in a backstage interview. This time, I believe it was completely on purpose. He talked about refocusing on the tournament before doing a stupid laugh that reminded me of Jadakiss, only to turn around and see Swerve, who called him a turd. Crowd was so loud for Swerve, it was tough to hear him at first. But the reason why the crowd was so loud is that AEW purposely either raised or kept the crowd mics loud, and they did not adjust the audio. Once they did, you could hear them perfectly. Ricochet kept talking over Swerve, which was really odd. Swerve said he's still the same old Trevor, a follower. Ricochet said the real Swerve will be angry when he wins the Continental Classic because Swerve lost it last year. Ricochet did the dumb laugh a second time, and Swerve made a "you still bald" comment referring to the old viral Twitter post. I promise I took a note on the Lashley Swerve deal before seeing this segment, but this obviously played directly into that idea. I don't necessarily dislike the Ricochet direction on its face, but it is kind of strange for a 36-year-old to be acting that way. It would work a lot better if he was 26 and actually a junior to all these guys. At least it's something different, though. Definitely willing to see how it plays out. Also, and I love Swerve, I'm not sure a guy named Stefan should really be making fun of a guy named Trevor. You know what I'm saying? On Rampage, Toni Storm beat Harley Cameron in 7+ minutes with Storm Zero. Yes, you heard that right. The in-ring return for the top women's star in the company came on the C show that barely gets 200,000 viewers. Then on Collision, she beat Shaza McKenzie in 2 minutes. The best part, she looked great in the ring. The wrestling was way better in this gimmick compared to Timeless. Now, the gimmick with Storm, it's basically that she kind of has amnesia, so she's reverted back to her original character. That included her announcing after the ladder match that she's officially all elite, thinking she had not signed previously. Commentary did a really shit job selling that. There was no wondering why she's talking like that or why she's saying this or what's going on with her. Now, that somewhat explains the look on Storm's face when she returned for 15 seconds on Dynamite last week. It does not explain how someone with years worth of amnesia, in theory, would know to show up immediately after a main event involving her rival and that rival's best friend. That doesn't compute with an amnesia gimmick at all. Now on Collision, we saw a promo from Mariah saying she doesn't give a fuck, quote unquote, about Toni returning, and she's still friends with Mina despite what happened in their match. She also accepted Thunder Rosa's challenge. Rosa cut a promo back at her, saying there was a place for May in hell. Storm introduced herself to Rosa and Shivani, despite the fact that this could not have worked timeline-wise because Shivani was just on commentary for her match. Thunder challenged for World's End, a Tijuana street fight. So not only is she getting a title match without beating anyone but Harley recently twice, she's getting the opportunity to dictate the stipulation against the dominant champion. That's totally nonsensical. Now, to be fair, Rosa is technically on a 5-match winning streak when it comes to one-on-one affairs. The problem is the other 3 all happened over the summer. It's just lazy booking to not build her up in a more significant way before you give her a title match. But the match itself will be good. May accepted this match with a decent promo on Dynamite. By the way, quickly, circling back to Harley for a moment, I've said it before. She's unironically among my favorite parts of AEW right now. And she also had a fun week on social media, posting videos of her not only singing quite well, but practicing ventriloquism. I watched the latter and I was astonished at how multi-talented she is. AEW must figure out a way to use her more. It's great that she's a personality-filled jobber. It just feels like it's a missed opportunity not to do more with her. But I do like that she's getting featured on TV so much. She is way better on her own than with Saraya or with anyone else. On Dynamite, Storm got an interview package with that RJ City guy, with her speaking as if she was a rookie coming into AEW from Gold Coast, Australia. She laughed at the idea of being a 3-time women's champion, thinking that would be great to happen in her future. And she put over all of her former rivals, knowing exactly who they were, but not knowing her role against any of them. She did seem to tweak a bit at the mention of May, so perhaps it's not amnesia, but it's a mental disassociation. But commentary said Storm was stepping back in time. So I'm just a bit unsure of the exact direction they're going for and the exact direction they're telling us that they're going for. What might be interesting is if she does a full role reversal with Mariah and becomes her protege. Now, you might say, Silver King, that would be illogical for May to accept her as a protege when she hates her and can assume that she'll turn on her. But as a heel, the ability to completely lord over your greatest rival is way too attractive to ignore. We've seen this myriad times in professional wrestling. Think about Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton joining the Wyatt family. Those are similar, not identical, but similar examples. The payoff would obviously be Toni turning on Mariah down the line, perhaps even the entire deal being a ruse to get back at her. You could even tie it into the Timeless gimmick with Toni saying it was her greatest performance yet. And if that's what they're doing, I'll probably think of it as the most intricate angle in AEW history. And kudos if that's the direction they're going. We'll find out in the coming weeks. On Collision, Willow Nightingale beat Jamie Hayter in 12 minutes to qualify for the Women's Cup thing at Wrestle Dynasty. Really good match. Nightingale kicked out of Haterade, which was not sold well by commentary. Willow hit a nice lion salt, but commentary was so scripted that Tony Schiavone called the pounce before she even moved into the move. He's truly terrible. He's bringing this down considerably, this entire product. Hayter countered Dr. Bomb into a backbreaker over her knee, only for Nightingale to counter Haterade into Dr. Bomb at the end. Huge pop for Willow, who again should be pushed as the top 1 or 2 woman in this division. She busted her nose open on the finish, by the way. I'd have said the wrong person won, given Willow's been losing matches recently. I would say that if Jamie had been booked properly at all since returning. But they completely wasted her comeback and any momentum that might have gone along with it. So losing here for her was perfectly fine. Julia Hart did a lights out surprise return and attacked Hayter after the bell, building their feud. Hayter then challenged for Fight for the Fallen during a brief promo on Dynamite. Another no-win situation, at least for Hayter. You either have her lose to Hart, who is just returning and really should win, or you have her beat Julia and snuff out that comeback momentum. At this point, they probably need to put Hart over Hayter, just given the circumstances. Maybe even send her away for 2 months, have her work independence, do other stuff, and then bring her back with a brand new fresh return where she can win matches. The good news is the women's division is much better off with Willow, Jamie, and Julia all around it, and they are all around it. On Dynamite, MJF came out in a Hanukkah suit and got cheap heat talking shit about the Washington Wizards since they were in DC. Fans chanted "Wizards suck," which I loved. They know it. He twice called the fans poor, but they were nevertheless pretty hot hanging with his promo. MJF then did like a fake ASPCA commercial live showing a photoshopped Adam Cole saying he wanted to help a small yellow baby. Cole then appeared on the big screen looking normally colored for once. He revealed that Tony Khan has allowed Kingdom, I think, to join him ringside for the match to make sure MJF doesn't use the Dynamite Diamond ring before the bell, or like before the second bell. Cole then appeared in the ring behind MJF and laid him out with a super kick. Legitimately the funniest and most entertaining thing that MJF has done in a long time. I'm talking about the ASPCA part. The rest of it was a total eye roll. Cole's promo was fine. The concept of stablemates being allowed ringside with him, it did not seem like something that needed to be announced. I actually have a level of concern that they might turn on Cole and that somehow allow the storyline to continue. Kingdom turns, aligns with MJF. Then you get Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong back together, and they actually do the undisputed gimmick. I hope that's not what happens. In lieu of that, this was a huge step up in entertainment, even if you, like me, wish this was not happening at all. So let's just hope they keep operating this way going into World's End, and then whatever happens on that show just completely ends this. On Dynamite, there was finally a mention of Kenny Omega fighting in Japan about 2 weeks from the match actually happening at Wrestle Dynasty. There was also a brief teaser trailer, but no information about his opponent, the storyline, or anything else. This remains nonsensical because we're not talking about Omega fighting on Wrestle Kingdom, which is New Japan's show in its entirety, but rather Wrestle Dynasty, which is a co-promoted show. Regarding Omega being signed full-time to AEW, but rather fighting his return match in Japan as part of a non-AEW storyline, it's frankly ridiculous. Now, don't get it twisted. I understand the situation. Omega asked for the opportunity to return in Japan, probably out of respect for his career there, and Tony Khan granted it probably to both placate his talent and throw New Japan a bone, given all the talent he's taken away from them over the last few years. But there is almost zero reason why this has not been built to some degree on AEW television, especially considering the way Omega was attacked by the Young Bucks when he tried to cut that rah-rah promo a couple months ago. You could build an entire show around Omega's return, have him start speaking about his forthcoming clearance and how he's seeking to help AEW, only to have the New Japan storyline take him off track from those plans. Or even start it in Japan and then run a chapter in America so it speaks to both audiences and it creates a sensible reason for why his first feud and match is not back in AEW. Anyway, look, I'm excited for Omega to get back on AEW TV. AEW is always better when he's active. I presume the latest he will be back is January 8th. Maybe he returns at World's End. That way they get a big name coming back on the show. They get a big name coming back at Fight for the Fallen, and then maybe they do even another comeback on January 8th. Also, if they do it at World's End, it helps promote Wrestle Dynasty. So again, earliest World's End, latest January 8th. On Rampage, Powerhouse Hobbs and Mark Davis beat Konosuke Takeshita and Lance Archer in 12 minutes. This came after a Don Callis family promo where he called the Archer Bryan Cage Team Murder Machine. Good name. Kind of nonsensical that Archer would then immediately be in a match with a different partner. I know Hobbs challenged Takeshita. That makes sense. But if the idea was to align it, then it really should have been Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher against Davis, because Davis hates Fletcher. Fletcher also cut another okay promo on Ospreay. The good news is that these guys have legit heat as heels. Hobbs pinned Archer and took out Takeshita after the bell. I'm sure Konosuke will retain the title ultimately. Callis on Collision announced Takeshita Hobbs for World's End, saying it was his idea to get revenge on Powerhouse. I assume that was heel delusion and not them trying to recalibrate the story, because it was Hobbs who rightly and deservedly made the challenge. On Collision, Orange Cassidy, Daniel Garcia, and the Outrunners, beat the Premier Athletes and MXM Collection in 9 minutes. Why? Literally no effing reason whatsoever. On Rampage, Chris Statlander backstage said neither she nor Mercedes Moné have stopped thinking about their Full Gear match. Her goal is to keep moving forward in wrestling with eyes still on the TBS title. Doesn't really sound like moving forward if you're doing the exact same thing. Promo is okay. On Collision, Stat beat someone named Tuti Lin in 2 minutes. Definitely the type of building block you want to give a wrestler on a title quest. What a joke. 2 women's matches on Collision lasting less than 4 minutes combined. On Dynamite, the TBS title was on the line. Mercedes Moné retained over Anna Jay in 10 minutes. This opened the show. It was a really nice match. Jay locked in Queenslayer at one point. Moné appeared to escape by biting her arm. She got a rope break on Statement Maker and avoided the gory finisher, only to eat a sunset flip bomb into the corner, a Meteora, and Moné Maker. Maybe the best Mercedes has hit her finisher since debuting it. Moné has looked way better in the ring over the last 6 weeks than she did the entirety of her debut until that point. Stat watched this backstage. If they just give her a rematch right away at World's End without deserving it, I'm going to lose my effing mind. Speaking of, Anna cannot be given another title match of any kind for at least 6 months. And if they do it in 6 months, she needs to earn that shit. Over the weekend, Moné apparently had a great match with one of the Stardom women. Then Mina challenged her for the NJPW Strong title, apparently putting one of her own on the line. What was most notable about the post-match here was the strange, chaotic dance they both did, almost in tandem with each other, despite being opponents. It was just really weird. On Rampage, Matt Cardona beat Brian Keith in 11 minutes. Another example of AEW giving too much to a low-carder against a main eventer, given Cardona is challenging for the ROH title. AEW briefly showed a basic clip from ROH TV of a contract signing, but we didn't get any details about what was said. Jericho was on commentary for this, and Cardona has reportedly been offered an AEW contract, which, whatever. His current gimmick and such, it works so well on the independents. Just throwing him into AEW on a weekly basis wouldn't be as interesting. Perhaps he can work a unique contract where he makes a certain number of AEW appearances, but he's not a fully contracted wrestler. That would make a lot more sense for him. Again, just my opinion. He gets to determine his own career. On Dynamite, Jericho got a King of New York vignette of him touring the city, primarily Times Square and downtown, while narrating it himself. It was pretty good. One of the better Jericho efforts recently. I will say AEW has done a far better job building up this main event for an ROH show than pretty much any that I can remember since Khan bought that company. I'm still not going to watch it live, but I'm at least curious to learn the outcome of the match. Not sure what's going on with Eddie Kingston. It would make way too much sense for Jericho to beat Cardona, and then Kingston returns, saves him from a beatdown, and then eventually takes both the strap and the King of New York title off of Jericho. If they're not building that, they should be. On Dynamite, Hook and Katsuyori Shibata fought Christian Cage and Nick Wayne. Shibata had Wayne basically knocked out with a sleeper hold, only to release it and hit a PK. Shayna Wayne distracted the referee to prevent the cover, allowing Cage to hit kill switch and throw Wayne over Shibata for the win. The wrestling was solid in parts here. Yes, I know Shibata is friends with Hook and Kayfabe, but the guy was just randomly thrown into this match out of nowhere coming out of last week's attack. He's been doing absolutely nothing since he last teamed with Hook in early July. I think he's been wrestling like bullshit ROH matches. Where's he been this entire time? That Hook's father got attacked and he needed backup against these guys. I gotta assume Samoa Joe is coming back soon. They're going to do a 6-man in this feud. Otherwise, it just doesn't even make sense. On Rampage, Deonna Purrazzo beat Mackenzie in 90 seconds. Positive, 2 women's matches on one show. Negative, this lasted 90 seconds. It was irrelevant. Mackenzie had 2 matches in as many days, neither of them for any reason. I don't even believe she's a signed talent. And lastly, on Collision, Lio Rush and Action Andretti beat Top Flight in 11 minutes. A tope suicida from Lio incidentally took out Layla Gray as Dante Martin flew into her. The heel side took advantage of the distraction with a frog splash and springboard 450. No idea if the legal guy even got the fall. At least they're more interesting than Top Flight. Match was okay, nothing special, but hey, it's a low card storyline on the B show that will soon be the B show out of 2 shows instead of 3. So I guess it's okay. So that wraps up AEW this week. Like I said, way more entertaining and exciting for me as a viewer than many of the recent episodes back-to-back weeks that Dynamite and Collision have both been valuable watches. The ratings aren't necessarily bearing it out, but if you keep putting on good television, theoretically, the ratings should rebound. AEW had not been putting out good television for pretty much the prior 3 months, maybe even longer than that. So this is perhaps a step in the right direction. It is a step in the right direction in terms of the on-screen product. It might be a step in the right direction in terms of the off-screen viewership or the people who are viewing it on their screen. The comparison I made there didn't exactly make sense, but you knew exactly what the Silver King was going for. So with that said, let's wrap up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. First, just One more reminder that we have your WWE Saturday Night's Main Event instant analysis and your WWE episode in the feed for your listening pleasure. We will be back on Tuesday with your next WWE episode that will be a Christmas Eve edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So I know you all, or many of you, I should say, not all of you, certainly not the Silver King. Many of you will be with family and friends over the holidays. Just make sure you listen to the Getting Over Wrestling podcast at some point before the following Tuesday. Let's hit you with some additional reminders on the way out of the show. First, of course, that this podcast
is all about Defy.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take some extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. And follow us on Blue Sky at Getting Over. The latter two for episode drops, news analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show. Please vote for us as Wrestling Podcast of the Year. That ballot has been pinned on both social media accounts. And don't forget to join in with your nominees for the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties, next week on social media. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis post weekly. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Please financially support the continuation of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to today's show. I hope everyone has a great, for many of you, football-filled weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday talking WWE. The year is wrapping up. A lot of exciting stuff here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. That year in review is also still to come. However, at this juncture, this is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.